And you served in both the European and Pacific Theater of Operations.
All over.
All over. Okay, that covers it. All right. Now, were you drafted, Paul, or did you enlist?
I enlisted.
You enlisted. And can you tell me approximately when and where you enlisted?
In Springfield, Mass.
Okay.
And one of my closest buddies was a radio operator.
Okay.
And he used to communicate with me on a radio.
Okay.
And his name was Bill Elliott.
Okay. He communicated with you on the radio. You mean what type of a radio? This was before you joined the service?
No.
When you were in the service?
When I was in, yes.
And he enlisted with you, or?
Yes, he did.
So he was a local friend of yours?
Right.
Okay. So you enlisted in Springfield. You remember approximately when? Was it 1942 or even right after? Well, it must have been
1941.
You enlisted before Pearl Harbor or after?
Right.
Immediately after, perhaps?
I would say it was after.
Okay. So very end of 1941, possibly early 1942.
I was in the Navy in 1942. January 28th, I think, was my date.
That's pretty good memory. Okay, so it was very shortly after Pearl
Right.
Harbor. Okay, very good. And you were living in Granville at the time?
No, Southwick. I was born there.
Southwick, Massachusetts.
Right.
Okay. What were you doing at the time that you joined?
I was working in a machine shop, the Foster machine in Westfield.
So you were finished high school, and you were...
I never went to high school. I just went to the trade school.
I see.
And being in the machine shop, it helped me out on my recruitment where I got I was in the Navy, and by working in a machine shop, I got a little better rate.
It helped you qualify
Right.
for that position right off the bat. Okay. Why did you enlist? Can you just sort of tell you what your feelings were that made you want to enlist?
It was right after Pearl Harbor. And that's what got me going.
You're very upset about Pearl Harbor. You wanted to contribute.
I don't know if I was upset or not, but I think it was the thing I was supposed to do.
Okay.
Either I would have been drafted or I enlisted.
Okay. And by enlisting, you could choose your branch of service. Is
Right.
that right?
Right.
So you knew you wanted to go into the Navy.
Right.
Okay.
Where were your brothers at the time?
Home.
I thought they had enlisted. No?
They did, but I enlisted before them.
Oh.
So you were the first brother to enlist.
Right.
Okay. All right. Okay. And why did you pick the Navy? Why did you want to be in the Navy?
I had heard a lot of good things about it, and I didn't care too much for the Army. And I got more out of the Navy than I would anything else.
Okay. Okay. Can you recall your first days in the service after you enlisted? Can you tell us a little bit about that? Where did you go from?
Newport, Rhode Island.
That's where they sent you right away.
Right.
Okay.
And it was a cold day in January.
Cold New England day.
Right. And I was supposed to go on one of the ships that sunk in New York Harbor. I can't think of the name right now, but it was one of the first ones that was supposed to be a troop transport.
Okay.
I think that's That's the right answer.
And it was sunk, you said?
It was sunk in New York Harbor. And you might recall what the name of it was. I'm not sure right now what the name was, but it was a popular name, popular ship line.
Okay.
And that's about far as I can go because I was supposed to go on it, and it was sunk before I could get to it.
Okay, so at this point, you're in Newport, Rhode Island.
Right.
Okay. So since that ship was sunk, what did they do with you? Were you being trained at that point? Had you been put together with a crew at that point, or were?
I probably was.
Okay.
And it was I was supposed to go on a ship that was being built in Quincy, Mass.
Oh, brand new commissioned ship.
Right. It was one of the top line ships at that time.
Okay.
It was real fancy.
Okay. And what type of ship was that?
A light cruiser.
Okay.
And it was built in Quincy, Mass.
Okay.
Quincy shipyards.
Okay. So once it was built, then you were put together with a crew.
Right.
You were the first maiden crew for that ship.
Right.
Okay. Did they do what's called a shakedown cruise? The first cruise?
Yeah, that was one of the doozies.
That was a doozy, I'll bet. Where did you go for your first?
North Atlantic.
Okay, you went straight to the North Atlantic.
Right.
Okay. Well, when you were in Newport, how long did you stay in Newport to receive training to prepare you to go on that cruise? Can you tell me about how long you were there?
Well, I might have been there maybe a month.
A month, okay.
Because the ship was being built in Quincy.
Right.
And I was put on it, and right away quick went to the Boston Navy Yard.
Okay.
And all my training was from Quincy into South Boston.
Okay.
And after that, I went on the North Atlantic Patrol.
Okay, well, when you were still in your training, can you remember any of your instructors? Do you have any vivid memories of any of the instructors you had?
I can remember them, but I can't think of the names.
Okay. What were they like? Just tell me.
Well, I was a chief machinist mate, and I was on number 2 engine room, and all my training was on the ship.
Okay.
And it was kind of sort of hectic because I was never on nothing else.
Right. It was your first experience on
Right.
a ship, I would imagine.
Yeah. And all I was a seaman.
Okay.
And yeah, I was in a number 2 engine room, and all my training was through the original people that were on it.
Okay.
And mostly was the chief machinist mate.
That trained you.
Right.
Okay. Do you remember about how many men were on the crew of the cruiser? How many men made up the crew?
About 800.
800. So it was
It was
pretty large crew.
right.
Okay. It must have kind of been tough to go through the training. How did you get through it? Did you have friends that kind of gave you encouragement and solidarity?
There were no friends.
You were kind of on your own at the time, huh?
As the machinist mate was under me, gave me all my instructions, and one of my first jobs was polishing the screws.
Polishing the screws
With an air gun.
with an air gun. Okay.
And
Now, what screws were those? Screws in an engine room? Or?
No, they're on the bottom of the ship.
Oh, wow.
They were
Screws, the propellers then.
right,
Wow, and you polished those with an air gun.
right.
Wow.
And
Is that when the ship was still out of the water?
it was in
Dry dock?
it was in dry dock.
Okay.
And after we polished, it was transported from Quincy to Boston Harbor.
Okay.
And one of my first jobs was a dirty job.
It was a dirty job.
Well, the ship was in the ocean in Quincy, and from Quincy it went to the South Boston Navy Yard in the dry dock.
Okay.
It was transported to there under its own power. And I had some of the dirty jobs. I don't want to say it that way, but we made out pretty good.
You did. Okay. So the boat ended up in Boston Harbor.
Right.
And from there, it set sail to the Atlantic. Is
Right.
that right?
North Atlantic.
North Atlantic. Okay. Why don't you tell me where you went initially when you set sail to the North Atlantic? What was your mission, and where did you go?
After we made the trip on the North Atlantic, we went from South Boston Navy Yard to Norfolk, Virginia,
Okay.
for getting supplies,
Provisions.
Provisions.
And so on.
and ammunition, everything that they needed for that trip.
Okay.
And from Norfolk, we went down to the Panama Canal. And this was in July of 1942.
That you went to the Panama Canal.
Right.
Did you go to Russia first?
Yes.
Okay, why don't we backtrack for a moment? When you set sail from, you went down to Norfolk to get
Right.
provisions, but before you went to the Panama Canal, did you go out into the Atlantic to do any missions out there?
Yeah, we were, about that time, the subs from Germany were close to the New England coast.
Right.
And ships were being sunk and we were picking up survivors.
So that was your initial role,
Right.
was to pick up survivors from
Right.
sinkings. Okay. Can you tell us a little bit more detail about that? What you remember about going to pick men up in life rafts and so on? Just give us a little description of that.
Yeah, the men, survivors were floating around and we were picking them up.
What is,
There was, I'm not sure whether they were the German survivors or just survivors of the ships that they sunk.
okay. Does that mean that at some point you picked up survivors of German submarines when the submarine?
They could have been
destroyed?
two, yes, right.
Okay.
But we picked up everything we could get a hold
Right.
of. And that didn't last very long.
Where did you take the survivors? Take them back to the U.S. coast, or did you? Take
No, on the East Coast, we wherever we took the survivors, they were wounded or something, or they're having a hard time floating around.
In the oil slicks, right?
Right. That the oil slicks is what I remember more.
That was left over from
Right.
the sinking.
Well, the men were in the oil, so they came
Right,
to the
right,
ship,
right.
covered in oil.
Yeah, you're catching it pretty close.
So you did this for how long? A couple of months, or
Not very long, just only when the ships were sunk or something like that.
But then you
And-
bring the men back to the New England coast.
right.
Where did you take them to? Boston or to New York or?
It had to be either Boston or New York,
Okay.
because that's where that transport ship was getting ready to take passengers. It sunk before it could do anything.
Okay.
And in New York Harbor,
Okay.
Pier 1.
Okay, so you spent some time in 1942 retrieving survivors from torpedoed ships.
Right.
Okay. When that duty was over, did you then?
We headed toward the Panama Canal after we loaded supplies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Had you gone to Russia yet, or was that later?
That was on the first trip. We headed toward North Atlantic,
Mm-hmm.
and that didn't last very long, maybe 2-3 days.
Mm-hmm.
And after we got done with that, we headed toward Norfolk, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
So loaded supplies and stuff like that. And after we got loaded, we headed toward the Panama Canal. And this was in early 1942, July.
Okay.
And our first mission was in Guadalcanal.
Well, let me just stop you for a moment. Before we get over to the Pacific, did you have more voyages in the North Atlantic where you went to Russia to deliver supplies to Russia? I believe that was what I had heard you did.
It was that, but it didn't last very long, because all it was supposed to be was a shakedown cruise on first trip on heavy waters.
Okay. When did you go to Russia? Was that in?
We didn't go. We just hit this. I think we was on the Canadian side,
Mm-hmm.
and we just were on the outside of Canada,
Mm-hmm.
and named some of the islands there.
Nova Scotia?
Yeah, we went through that. Nova Scotia, the main island in Canada was, we were supposed to pull in there, but we never did. We just skirted the island and took off. We headed towards Russia,
Mm-hmm.
but we never hit Russia, just on a shoreline.
Did you deliver supplies to a Russian port?
No, we didn't. I don't think we had any supplies yet.
Okay.
And after we left there, we headed toward New York Harbor.
Mm-hmm.
And I was supposed to go on that transport ship, but it was sunk before anything could happen. Right in the harbor, Pier 1.
Mm-hmm.
Was it a fire?
It could have been a lot of things. Because about that time, the German subs, oh, here's Big Ed. The German subs were pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
And they were doing a lot of damage. And getting real close to the main line.
Hey there.
Yep, it's here.
Easier.
Okay, I'm going to pause for just a second.
Right.
Okay.
Area at the one end of the canal, there was them I don't know what.
Were they seabirds, Uncle Paul, or were they land birds?
Yeah, there were seabirds, and I can't think of the name of them.
I remember us talking about
Right.
it. Yeah.
Oh, now I know. Now it's coming back to me. There was some fancy turtles.
Big
Oh,
sea
the big
turtles?
sea turtles?
Right,
Yeah, we talked about that before.
right. And they were right on the edge of the tail end of the canal, and they're on the shore. You probably can tell me more about them than I can now.
So when you were going through the Panama Canal, you encountered some really large sea turtles.
Right,
Is that what you were saying?
right.
Okay.
And there was sea turtles and some other kind of animal, but I'm not sure what they are right now.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
go ahead.
But they were a sight to see, so that's about as close as I can get to it.
Okay. When you went through the canal, did you have leave so you could go to Panama City?
No.
You went straight through.
Wait a minute. Yeah, we did. At one end of the canal, I think we had a night off or something.
Okay.
But I don't want to talk too much about that.
It's a private night off.
It was sort of on the phony end of the thing.
Okay.
And if you could feed back a little bit, you know what I was talking about.
Okay. Did you get into town and get to some of the bars and see the people a little bit, or?
Very little.
Very little. Okay.
Because when they give you any time off, they limit it to what you could do.
Right.
And by saying that, you didn't have much time.
Right.
And
so you got through the canal.
Right. I think we had to stop for a little bit, not much though, because of that. About that time, things were kind of hectic with people going through there.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of traffic through
Right.
the canal. And this was probably around July of 1942, which means you were getting very close to when Guadalcanal happened. So where did you go directly from Panama Canal to Guadalcanal area to the Solomon Islands?
We were in Guadalcanal. That was August 7th, 1942.
Mm-hmm.
And then all hell broke loose.
Were you part of the initial invasion?
Right.
Did you shell the island, or did you just act as a troop escort, or?
We shelled the island with probably about 400 to 500 5-inch shells.
Mm-hmm.
And Japs were firing back at us from a hospital. And we had to do them in. And things quieted down, but it was still going pretty hard. Because I think Guadalcanal, the fighting on that lasted maybe 4 or 5 months or something like
It was
that.
a very long battle.
Right.
Initially, there were very few Japanese
Right.
on the island at first.
Right.
But they managed to land many other troops later. How
Yeah.
long were you at Guadalcanal?
How long?
How long do you think your cruiser was there to San Juan?
Well, we did all the fighting from August 7th, 1942. And I think we stayed there probably almost until December.
For several months then.
Right.
Okay.
And it was not an easy sight. Things were pretty rough.
Were you involved in any of the battles with Japanese ships in the Salvo Strait? What they call the slot, right?
Right. That was one of them, but there was a lot of fighting there before they got things settled down. I think maybe a couple months or so. And we got out of there without getting hit. But there's one island that we got dive bombed pretty good. Because I see the bombs dropping down. I'm looking up and they're coming down right toward us. And that's when we lost the rudder on the ship. After that, we had to go to Australia to get fixed up.
So you had rudder damage as a result of being dive bombed?
Yeah,
Okay, and that caused you to have to go to Australia.
it blew the rudder right off. It wasn't on the ship once it got hit.
How did the ship get to Australia? Did it have to be guided by tugs or?
No, there was 2 screws on the ship, and we had to use the screws for steering the ship.
Okay, so you had a backup way of steering the ship.
Right.
And that meant you had to go to Australia to get repaired.
Yeah, we were in bad shape.
Where did you go in Australia?
Sydney.
You had to
No.
leave there.
November 2nd, 4th, 1942.
Is when you went to Sydney.
Right.
Did you go ashore? Did you have some leave time in Sydney?
We had a little bit of time there. Whatever time it took to put a new rudder on it. And it probably was maybe a week or so. And we got a little bit of time. I got to go ashore with 3 or 4 fellows, and we did things we shouldn't have.
Did you make it back in time?
I got court-martialed. Yeah,
Why did you get court-martialed?
we overextended our leave.
So you were sort of AWOL is what they call it.
Right.
Okay.
And we was in trouble for maybe a month or so until they decided to reinstate us. And after that, ship was fixed up. We headed back toward the States. That's when we went by New Zealand. And I've seen some cows in a pasture, black and white ones to be exact. That's why I couldn't figure out why they had black and white Holsteins, because they never made very much milk. There were no those that they could make money out of, because most of the farmers around our way, like the Sunnyside Ranch, they probably had 500 or so big white, black and white cows. I know because I hauled to the plant. What was it? I think they made maybe 10 or 12 40-quart cans of milk. And it was very weak. I don't know how they ever made money.
This was in New Zealand?
No, this was in Southwick, Mass. Sunnyside Ranch.
When you saw the cows in New Zealand, it
Oh, yeah.
you,
They were black and white.
And where in New Zealand did you go? Do you remember the city where you went?
We didn't. All we went by was the shore. We never pulled into the ports.
Okay.
And I can remember they were all black and white cows, which were the low producers. But I don't want to say too much about that.
Okay. Where did you go from New Zealand? What was your next stop or next destination?
New Caledonia.
You headed for New Caledonia.
Yeah, that was one of our bases.
Okay. We had fighting on New Caledonia, didn't we, at one point? Or no, I'm thinking of Cape Gloucester. My apologies. So you went to New Caledonia.
Yeah, that was the first major port.
Okay.
And
Was that Australia?
no, New
No.
Caledonia.
New Caledonia. Okay.
That's a separate island, probably maybe 100 miles from New Zealand,
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
Sometimes I'm thinking back. Sometimes where I say it was, it wasn't.
Right.
But we made it through there, and New Caledonia, and there were a couple of islands that we worked with were based at, and 3 or 4 times they had the enemy fire come over there with planes, Zeros, because that's all I can remember. The Zeros always had probably two bombs where they dropped off but they never hit.
Mm-hmm.
But one we did hit was on I can't remember the name of the island that the bombs hit us, where we lost the rudder, and we had to go to a port to get fixed up. And it took probably about a week or so to do that, because all I had to do was put a new rudder on and hope we made it. Well, a lot of them things that we went through are pretty hard to remember because everything was done on a QT.
So you were in New Caledonia, and then where did you go from New Caledonia? And now it's probably 1943 at this point. Is that probably right?
Yeah, about that. 1940. A lot of them places we're at were pretty close to 42, 43. 42 was where we had a pretty good fight on August 7th, 1942, Guadalcanal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked about Guadalcanal. We got some
Right.
good statements on Guadalcanal.
Right,
And then you went back to have the rudder repaired in Australia.
right.
And then you went from there to New Zealand. And then you went to New Caledonia after that.
We just went by New Zealand.
Right. And then you went to New Caledonia.
And Caledonia was one of our bases.
One of your bases. And you talked briefly about that. But where did you go after New Caledonia?
Guadalcanal. We stayed around there for maybe a year or so. Do a lot of bombarding and stuff like that.
So after New Caledonia, you were back to the Guadalcanal area?
Right,
Okay, for the second time.
right.
Okay.
We did a lot of running around down there. And that was one of our bases we were operating out of.
Okay.
And Guadalcanal was one of the main ones.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said before, it's kind of hard to pinpoint things pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
But we were there for a little while.
Okay. And where did you go after your second stay in Guadalcanal?
I have a feeling we went to Pearl Harbor for major repairs.
For major repairs.
Right.
Okay.
And we stayed there for maybe a week or so. And I have a funny feeling that we went to California, LA, to the main base.
So you went back to the U.S. coast then?
Right.
Okay.
And we went back there. And we went up and down the coast. I think Seattle. And that was pretty the time that I was getting transferred off the ship. And I was going into Canada. And I was assigned to the Hollandia.
The Hollandia.
That was a baby flat top.
A baby flat top, and that was up on the west coast of Canada?
Right. One of the Kaiser coffin ships.
Kaiser coffin ships.
You know what I mean.
I think so. Can you tell me what you mean now?
That was one of the ships that it didn't have a chance of getting back.
Okay.
That was pretty shaky.
Okay.
But Henry Kaiser was making them. He made them in, I think, maybe 10 or 15 days.
Oh, they were quickly constructed.
Oh, yeah,
aircraft
right.
carriers.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I was on the Hollandia 87 or something was the name of it.
Okay.
In fact, they made 104 of them, just like that. Then they made them a little bit bigger, but I don't remember all of them now.
Mm-hmm.
But the one I was on, the Hollandia, was a CVE 97.
Okay. What does CVE stand for? You know?
That's one of Henry Kaiser's coffins.
Okay. So you've gotten off the San Juan cruiser.
19. That day I can't remember. It was on the West Coast, and from there I went to Seattle, and then I was a bartender at Craven Center in Seattle. And the old sergeant that run the show wanted me to stay on. But I told him different. I went back on Hollandia. I was training the crew for maybe a month or so.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, we headed toward the South Pacific.
Still on the Hollandia?
On a Hollandia, yeah.
Okay.
And when they signed the treaty, what was that, Wisconsin? That was in Japan.
But weren't you at Iwo Jima too?
Who?
Iwo Jima, weren't you there?
Oh yeah, Iwo Jima.
But where did the Hollandia go?
In the port.
On port, yeah.
So this was,
Seattle.
you were probably what, waiting to assemble a crew?
Right. Yeah, it was.
Now, how did you get the job as the bartender in the officers club?
I went looking for it. Yeah, my talking is not too good today.
I think it's great. Okay, so we're just going to go sum up, Paul. Basically, when you were at Guadalcanal, you also saw action at Tulagi,
Right.
correct?
That was one of our big jobs.
And you were also in some of the battles in Savo Island, where the Japanese and American ships fought back and forth.
Yeah.
That's also correct. After that, you escorted the aircraft carrier Wasp to the Battle of the Eastern Solomons. Is that correct?
It seems a little bit shaky because I escorted the Big E mostly just for,
The Big E is the Enterprise.
right.
Okay.
And the Hornet and the Wasp were somewhere in that picture, but I'm not too sure about it.
But you were
Big E was our big job.
okay, and then the lesser aircraft carriers were the
Right.
Wasp and the Hornet. Is that right?
Yeah, them I see go down.
The Wasp and the Hornet. You saw
Right.
them. You saw them.
Yeah,
sink.
right. We torpedoed them.
Okay, but the Enterprise, you then
And
that was damaged at one point. In
It
the
had-
Battle of the Eastern Solomons.
had flight deck damaged where they couldn't take on planes.
Planes couldn't land on
Right.
the deck, so you had to escort the Enterprise back to Pearl Harbor.
I'm not sure about that
Okay.
because most of our work was in the South Pacific,
Okay.
and if we went away from it, it was maybe something major that I can't remember.
Okay. Well, I think the research done by your niece indicates that you probably did help escort the Enterprise back to Pearl Harbor briefly. This would be in around September of 1942. And you were there for a couple of months.
That 42 doesn't sound right.
That was when Guadalcanal started.
Oh, yeah,
up,
right,
the
right.
end of 42.
Yeah, right.
43 actually. The end of 43.
42 was, we were firing at them at August 7, 1942.
Right.
That was a major part of it.
Okay.
At 43 was the Gilbert Island camp.
Okay. All right. Now, hold on. I'm just going to pause. One more. Holy campaign. Okay. So you, after escorting the Enterprise to Pearl Harbor, you then took the San Juan went to the Ellis Islands to deliver guns to the Marines in the Ellis Islands. Is that right?
I think it is, but the Ellis Islands is where the President Coolidge transport ship, it wasn't sunk, but it was bedded up against the shore.
Okay.
And I think it's still there.
Okay. It was wrecked along the shore then.
Right.
Okay. But you did deliver guns to the Marines there?
We did a lot of things. I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, I believe that the research your family has done seems to indicate that.
Right.
Then you went on to the Gilbert Islands, and it's there that you sank 2 Japanese patrol vessels. Can
Yeah,
you
they were.
describe that?
They were bouncing around from one island to another, and we caught them in between. And that's when I went aboard with a dynamite charge or something to sink it, because the bullets we were firing at them were going through and it wasn't sinking.
So you boarded the ship.
Right.
You'd already killed the Japanese crew or taken them prisoner, or?
Well, they probably weren't around.
Okay. They may have abandoned ship.
Yeah, I think.
Okay. But you sank 2 patrol vessels.
One I know.
How big were those vessels? Were they large boats, or were they like the American PT boat?
I would say that, yes.
A small patrol
Right.
boat.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, evidently, you went to, you were involved in the Battle of Santa Cruz.
That was a biggie.
That was a big one, and that was where the San Juan was damaged.
Right.
That was where dive bombers damaged the rudder. The bomb went through the rear.
It went through the rear end of, went right through the back end of the ship. It didn't sink it,
Right.
but it damaged it.
Damaged the rudder. And as a result, you had to go to Australia
We had to
using
get it
your screws to guide the boat.
right.
And then you went to Australia, to Sydney,
Right.
to have the repair work done
Right.
on the boat, and that was when you went. You took kind of an extra leave.
They try to blame us for something, but I never agreed to it.
You never agreed to it. Okay. And after you had the repair work done in Sydney, you passed by New Zealand. Is that correct?
Yeah, we passed by going toward the States or New Caledonia.
To
Well,
New Caledonia.
New Caledonia was close by there anyway.
So you went to the New Caledonia, and is that where you began to escort the carrier Saratoga?
We escorted all the aircraft carriers because that was our job for air cover.
Okay, but the Saratoga came into the picture around the end of 1942, around November of 1942.
I would say that, but I think it was there a little bit longer.
Okay, and at that point you went with the Saratoga to the island of Noumea in the Coral Sea. Is that correct? Evidently you were there for several months in the Coral
Well,
Sea.
that was our main base.
Okay. And were you in the Battle of the Coral Sea? Did you participate in that battle?
Well, there was all kinds of fighting going on there. It could have been that, but who could tell?
Okay. Okay. But that evidently was early 1943 that you
Right.
were in
Oh, yeah, right.
Noumea Island.
Noumea, New Caledonia.
Okay. And then from there, you moved on to the New Hebrides in the summer of 1943 and were stationed at the island of Espiritu Santo. Is that
Right.
correct?
Yep.
Okay. Can you tell us anything about Espiritu Santo? That was a pretty big base, wasn't it? There was a big airstrip there. There were a lot of Marine fighter plane units stationed there. Is that correct?
Is that what you know?
I'm trying to get you to tell me about your experience
Right.
there. Do you remember that well, or?
Well, the Marines were all over the place. And we helped them as much as we could, but I don't remember all the details.
Okay.
But we didn't do any transporting of them. Only the ones that did were the troop ships.
Okay.
And one in particular I know was President Coolidge.
The President Coolidge.
And that was sort of like beach on the shore.
At Espiritu Santo.
Right, and it's probably still there.
Okay. Okay. Now, after that, you participated in the campaign at Bougainville.
That reminds me that we probably did.
Can you tell me what was your role? What did the San Juan do? Did it do shelling of the island, or was it providing protection from Japanese ships? Or?
Well, we were doing all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And say one part of it again. So
Well, I believe that you came to the New Hebrides in the summer of 1943 to the island of Espiritu Santo, and then in October of 1943, the invasion of Bougainville occurred, and you.
that Bougainville sounds like we did a lot of stuff there. I'm not sure though. But Bougainville wasn't too big an island, I don't think.
That was also in no, that was not in the Solomons. That was in the New Hebrides, or was Bougainville in the Solomons? I believe it was.
Well, all the work we were doing was in the South Pacific, and if that was part of it, well, that would be it.
Okay.
The South Pacific was pretty big as far as parts of the world was.
Okay, well, if you were at Bougainville in October of 1943, I believe you then went to the Gilbert Islands in November of 1943.
That Bougainville seems to ring a bell for, on my part. I'm not sure too much what it was. But it was around some of them islands that we were at. But what we particularly did, I'm not sure. But anything we did was on the fighting end of it anyhow.
Mm-hmm. But your ship had not received any more damage after the rudder was repaired. At this point, the ship was fully functional.
Right.
And then you went evidently to the Gilbert Islands in November of 1943. Does that sound probably right?
It probably is.
Okay.
Because the South Pacific is a big area, and we were all over.
Okay. Your next stop was in December of 1943, where you escorted the carrier Essex to the campaign at Kwajalein in the Marshall Islands.
That was in 1943?
Very end of 1943.
That could be.
And I assume you did some bombardment of the island, or you just escorted the troop ships and provided protection for the troop ships?
That sounds about right.
Okay. Well, you're starting to build up quite a number of campaigns at this point.
Well, I know, I can't remember all of them.
Okay.
All I know is, on my records, I think was over 50.
Well, that's a great deal. Okay, now after...
A lot of things would happen in between times.
Well, if you think of a particular incident that stands out, please feel free to tell us about it or pause us so that we can talk about that. But
Well,
after you were at Kwajalein, I believe it was time to take the San Juan back to the west coast of the United States for an overhaul of the ship.
see, Kwajalein was in about the middle of the South Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
And that being the case, we were probably on our way back home.
When you stopped and participated in
Right.
this battle.
And I don't recall any fighting there other than just Marines or something.
Says you were fighting off a lot of torpedo attacks.
That's what you said? Well, okay. You got it better than I did.
So you faced a number of Japanese submarines when you were near Kwajalein,
I think that's true.
but you never were hit by a torpedo.
Not yet. We dropped a lot of depth bombs and stuff like that. But
Depth charges against
right.
the Japanese submarines.
yeah,
Okay.
they were pretty shaky deals when they dropped in the middle of the night. You didn't know what was going on.
Mm-hmm. Was that scary to think that you were vulnerable to being torpedoed?
I think so.
I bet it was.
Because if they're dropping depth charges, they know the subs were around, but they were around there anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So take it from there.
Okay. Well, then after Kwajalein, the San Juan did go back to the west coast for overhauling.
I don't recall us having to go back for any overhauls.
Okay. But you did return to the west coast.
If you got it on there, I did, but I'm not sure.
Well, because you remember you switched ships at that point
Switch ships,
to the Hollandia.
that could be, but I'm not too sure about that. Because when you had something about Mare Island, that's where I had a couple of teeth pulled out.
Mm-hmm.
And the dentist that did the job did a good job. But that's all I can say.
But at this point, you were back in the United States, and you were off the ship
And
for a while and driving trucks, and you were functioning as a bartender also. Is that correct?
yeah, that wasn't. What's the name of
Seattle, maybe?
Yeah, Seattle.
Oh, so you were up in Seattle, and you were driving trucks up there and bartending in Seattle?
Yeah.
Bartending on military bases? So you were bartending to servicemen.
I guess you can say that. Because about that time, anything I did was on my own part. That is, there were times that we could go offshore and do civilian work.
Oh, okay. So you may have been a civilian bartender for part of that time.
Civilian bartender and on a military base.
Can you still mix a good drink, do you think?
If I didn't have to give a Mickey on it.
Okay. Okay, so you drove trucks and you were a bartender.
I drove the big buses.
The big buses.
Yeah.
Driving troops around or driving supplies?
What I was doing was driving some kind of a crew that worked on the ship, or I can't spot what I was actually doing, but I was taking maybe school people to a base there. I know you probably could figure that out better by yourself, but
Transporting troops for training, maybe?
yeah, that's a training or something, but some kind of military work.
When you were a bartender, did you do any bartending in the officers' club?
Oh yeah, that's what I did.
Okay, so it was on the military base that you did the bartending.
Right.
Okay.
Well, it could have been, but all I can say was the name of the place was the Craven Center, and whether it was military or not, they went there for the drinks.
Who was your biggest tipper?
You shouldn't have asked me that, but I know who it was. He was an admiral, chaplain admiral, and he gave us a tip every time he went down there. It was a $20 bill.
That's a lot. That's a big tip in those
Right.
days.
Yeah.
So you spent several months on shore, and then you were put on board the Hollandia, which was a Kaiser coffin, a baby aircraft carrier.
Right.
And initially, that was so that you could help train some of the machinists on that
Right.
boat.
Yeah, that's what I did.
And was that the first voyage of the Hollandia? Was it It was a newly minted ship.
It was just built.
It was just built.
And it was built in Canada, and there was
It was built in Canada.
right.
Okay.
And there was I should have remembered the name of the town, but I can't. It doesn't come to me.
Okay.
Built in Vancouver, Washington?
Oh yeah, that was where the Hollandia was based on the first part.
Mm-hmm.
But then there was another town that seems to evade me somehow.
Okay. Well, the Hollandia, if you were on, it was a newly minted ship, so you were on its maiden voyage.
Right.
At one point later in 1944 and going into early 1945, you took several voyages to different destinations in the Pacific to deliver supplies, replacement aircraft, and so on.
Right.
Is that correct? And the islands would include Vanos, Ulithi. You went to
Ulithi, Manus. There's another one.
Guam.
And we went to Guam once or twice.
Okay. And evidently your role at that point on the aircraft carriers, you functioned on the lower deck to help secure the planes when they landed, or can you describe what your role was? In other words, you were not a machinist mate, but you functioned in other capacities also on
Right,
the ship.
right.
Can you describe that?
You know. Sometime tomorrow ask me that.
I'm sorry?
Sometime tomorrow ask me.
Tomorrow.
I'll have to call you up and get you to clarify that.
But you helped, I thought you helped the planes take off.
Yeah, I handle all the takeoffs, catapulting. Yeah,
So you were involved in helping the planes catapult off the
right.
Okay, so that was a very important role,
Right.
Very crucial.
That was the only one that I had anything to do with, and we shot them off. They're all under high pressure aircraft or air compressors, over 5,000 pounds.
So you operated huge air compressors to help catapult the planes off the ship.
I operated the compressors that built up the pressure up to 5,000 pounds, and that was a job that took a little bit of time because I had to fill up all the tanks. So over 5,000 pounds for the catapults to work.
Okay.
And sometimes it took a little time to do it.
Mm-hmm. Now, is it true that eventually, we're now in 1945, you were doing a number of these trips to different islands, including Guam,
Right,
but then you became part of the task force that went to support the invasion of Iwo Jima. Is that
Right.
correct?
right.
Were you part of the initial bombardment of the island before the troops went on shore?
My,
Do you remember that?
the ship was involved in the bombarding. That's all I can say.
I believe that was very controversial because the Marines had asked for 10 days and the Navy only gave them 4 days.
Right,
And then eventually it actually turned out to only be 2 days of
Right.
bombardment. So there was friction between the Navy and the Marines over whether they got the support that they needed because much of the Navy was bombarding the Japanese coast at that time.
right. So the Navy and the Marines were one unit.
Right.
And if it were fighting with each other, that's not what they were supposed to be doing.
So how long did you stay off the coast of Iwo Jima? Were you there throughout the battle?
I have a feeling we were, because the battle involved probably about many thousands of men.
Yes.
I'm not sure how much though.
Many casualties.
Right,
Terrible amount
Right.
of casualties.
that was a biggie.
Mm-hmm. So you probably were there for most of the battle
Until it stopped.
until it stopped, and then you became part of the force that was formed to help with the fighting on Okinawa for the invasion of Okinawa. Is that correct?
I don't think the ship was involved in that, other than on the water.
Well, it says you were sending fighters to support the troops. You were offshore.
Well, if you got it there, it had to be it, but I don't think any force on a ship was only doing what they were supposed to do.
Right. It says you were sending fighters. Does that mean planes? Fighter planes?
Yes.
It could be, but if it was the other end, it was probably the boats. What do you call them? Landing boats.
The Higgins boats.
Yeah, right. You got it.
Okay. Now, were you to pause in the chronology, was there any time you spent in the Aleutian Islands in Alaska? Can you put that in the order? Maybe Darcy can help with that.
That I'm confused.
That was the time that we picked up a Japanese one-man torpedo boat.
And that's the one I can't find anything about because it was quiet. It was
Right.
classified, I think,
Right.
or something.
So you picked up a Japanese submarine.
Right. It had landed on shore. I don't know why, but
In Alaska, in the Aleutian
right,
Islands.
right.
And you were able to capture that submarine.
We picked it up. I don't know if we captured it or not.
But you picked it up.
Right.
With the crew still, did you capture the Japanese crew, or they were gone already, probably? They had abandoned the submarine.
I have a feeling that's what happened
Okay.
because it was landed ashore, and if there was anybody in it, I didn't see him
Okay.
because a one-man sub, I think it would have maybe 2 men on it.
That had been a 1 or a 2 man
Yeah.
sub with maybe 2 torpedoes.
Right.
The Japanese used some of them at Pearl Harbor.
Right.
So they were using them throughout the war.
Just 2 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, tiny little submarines. They used 6 at Pearl Harbor, I think.
Oh.
So
You caught it.
after Okinawa, we're now up to probably May or June of 1945, and evidently you then went back to San Diego. Is that right, to do more transporting of supplies back and forth?
Transporting.
Maybe Darcy can help on that too.
Yeah.
What was that kind of military work that they did on a ship?
So
See,
we were doing cargo and passenger transport.
right. The passenger end of it I know, but I don't know what they were for.
Where were you taking them?
San Diego.
So you went back and forth from San Diego back to the Pacific after Okinawa.
I think I made 2 trips.
Two round trips.
Right.
To San Diego.
90 miles an hour.
Yeah, you wouldn't have had much time for much else.
In other words, as fast as you
Right.
could go.
Right.
Not quite 90 miles an hour.
It was that.
Pretty fast. Huh?
Oh yeah, them big diesel buses could move.
Okay.
And if I remember right, they were all they weren't 4 cylinders. No, I got it wrong. They were 2-cycle diesel engines.
2 strokes, as they call
Right.
them. These are talking about buses that you were driving, is that right?
Right.
Okay.
And they were the most modern buses that was on the market at that time.
Mm-hmm.
They were all hydraulically operated.
Mm-hmm.
But that's as far as I can go.
Well, when you were when the Hollandia was going back and forth after Okinawa to San Diego and transporting troops and supplies, were you, at that point, did you think you were going to be in the eventual invasion of the Japanese mainland? Had you heard anything about that at that point?
Yes.
That they were preparing you for a build-up to invade the Japanese islands?
Yeah. On one of the islands, what was the name of Ulysses,
Okay, we
and I had thousands and thousands of ships ready to go in, but I never seen them.
okay.
I see the ships there, but I didn't see them go into action.
Okay. Now, during those final months of the war, evidently you helped with the survivors of the sinking of the ship Indianapolis,
Right.
which had just delivered one of the atom bombs
Right.
to the island of Tinian for eventually
Right.
being dropped on Japan. And the Indianapolis, of course, was torpedoed by the Japanese, the sailors, the survivors were in the water for several days.
Right.
Probably 2/3 died of
Right.
shark attacks
Yep.
and exposure, but you helped rescue some of those men. Can you tell us just a little bit about that?
If they're out there and floating around, yes, we did. If we caught up with them.
And you helped bring them where? Did you help take
San
them?
Diego.
You took them to Guam first and then
Right.
to San Diego?
Yep.
Okay. Did you ever talk to any of those survivors or get a chance to interact with them?
I don't think they allowed us.
Okay. You were kept separate from
Right.
Okay.
They slept on cots on a hangar deck, and they kept pretty close watch of them.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, now we're getting close to the end of the war. So, can you remember where you were when we dropped the atom bombs and Japan eventually surrendered? Were you still on the Hollandia at that point?
Yeah.
And where were you? Out in the Pacific, or were you back at San Diego?
It was in the Pacific, close to Japan.
Close to
We're
Japan.
we're ready to go in, but we didn't. And then when they signed that thing, it was on a Wisconsin.
Were you there in Tokyo Bay? Or
Yeah, right,
You were.
right.
So your ship, the Hollandia, was one of the fleet that was in Tokyo Bay.
It was one of the probably 3,000 that was ready to go in.
Mm-hmm. And did you celebrate on the Hollandia when the Japanese surrendered? Was there a lot of celebration and excitement over the war being brought to an end?
I don't know if I knew it at that time. There was something going on, but I don't know what.
You didn't know you were at the surrender?
I'm wondering whether you were not necessarily at the surrender, but you were part of the force that would have invaded Japan.
I think so, yes.
Okay.
Because at that time, an invasion party was on an island of Ulysses, and they were just waiting to get the word to go in, but they didn't.
You never went on you never actually yourself went on any of the Japanese main islands during the occupation.
No.
So
Only things we were close to is when we were dropping the bombs with the B-29s.
mm-hmm.
But all we could see was them flying over us.
B-29 Super Fortresses.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, tell me, when the war ended, what happened to you? Did the Hollandia go back to the West Coast? Did you stay in the South Pacific for a while? Tell me about coming back to the West Coast, and eventually, I assume you were discharged at some point. Do you remember when that was? Any detail of that? And maybe Darcy can help if necessary.
I was let out of the Navy in Camp Pendleton as the main base.
Now,
But
on your discharge papers, it said Boston.
well, yeah, that's where they give me $5 to go from Boston to Westfield.
So you came back, the ship came back to Camp Pendleton.
Right.
In California.
With the survivors.
Of the Indianapolis.
Right.
Okay.
But there's a time between that I haven't come across yet.
Okay. But when you got back to the United States, to Pendleton, did you then travel across the United States to Boston, where you were then discharged?
Yeah, 35 miles an hour on a World War I train.
On a train?
Yeah.
So you took the train across the United States,
right.
Very slow.
Yeah.
And it took you to Boston.
Right.
And you were discharged in Boston.
Yeah, what's the name of the building? I should know it, but I can't think of it right now.
Train station in Boston?
South Station?
not South Silan. Not,
Yeah.
it was a separate building, not too far from the Navy Yard, right on the main drag.
In Boston.
Yep,
And that's where you were discharged.
right.
And then you went home from there?
Yeah, the Navy gave me $5 to get home.
They tried to get you to sign up though, didn't they? And what did
Well,
you tell
we haven't got to that point yet.
All right. So the Navy wanted you to stay in the Navy.
The chaplain that was trying to recruit the men was talking to me, and I had to tell him the only way I would ever get back if they put air conditioner in hell.
Okay. So evidently you left the Navy at that time.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Well, let me ask you a couple of just general questions, Paul, about your when you were in the service, about life on the boat. Did you stay in touch with your family? Did you correspond with your family? Did you write letters regularly? Did you receive packages and from them from home?
Once in a while, we got a bundle of gum or something like that,
Okay.
but I couldn't get much more.
Okay. What did you think of the food in the Navy?
Good,
It was good food?
right.
That's what I've heard from all the Navy guys I've talked to. Did you have all the supplies you ever wanted? I mean, if you needed toiletries and things like that, you always had those things.
If we couldn't get them on the ship, we got them off the ship or some other ship.
Okay. Were there times when you felt a lot of pressure or stress or anxiety during some of the battles? Or I assume when you thought you were going to get torpedoed, were you worried a lot of the time? Or did you just not worry because you were so busy and...
Well, it could be that, but I never thought I'd make it past 25.
You did a good job, I think. You made it well past 25. Did you do anything for good luck when you were on your ships? Did you carry a good luck piece, or?
Yeah, I played poker with one of the Marines who were going home, and I won all his money.
Okay, that's the guy. But I meant, was there anything that you kept on you at all times that you felt would protect you during battle?
They always told us to make sure we kept the tags,
Just kept your dog tags. Okay.
because if I lost them, they'd never know what was going on.
Okay. What did you do for entertainment when you were on the ships? You played cards a lot, I'm assuming, or did you do that?
Once in a while.
You played cards.
I never thought too much of it though.
Did you ever have entertainers come and entertain you when you were at some of the island bases? Did you ever see Bob Hope or any other?
I seen Bob Hope, Jack Benny, Eleanor Roosevelt.
You saw all of them.
They all come on
Where did you
board.
see Bob Hope and Jack Benny? Do you remember where that was?
Well, I can't remember exactly, but it was in the South Pacific somewhere, about 6,000 miles away from home.
But you did see them.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
right.
Wow. And Jack Benny.
And Jack Benny, Jack Little. Because my job on the ship was to entertain them the best way I could.
Did you ever actually get to meet them?
Oh yeah, sure.
You met Bob Hope.
Oh yeah, Bob Hope, Jack Benny. Jack Benny, I met him on the West Coast somewhere. It must have been Seattle.
You're very fortunate. That must have been quite an experience. Can you recall anything like a humorous event or a prank that you guys played on each other? I mean, war is hell, as they say, but you must remember some pranks or humorous things that happened.
We did. We told a few tricks. Did a few tricks. Some we like to talk about, others so that would win.
What, did you cross the equator? Did you go through that experience?
A lot of times,
You did.
right.
Did they make you run the gauntlet and go through a rite of passage or a ceremony when you crossed the equator?
When we was around the equator, that was when we met up with a little bit of heavy war work. And some did and some didn't.
Okay. Do you have photographs from when you were in service? Do you have pictures of yourself?
They never let us have them.
Do any pictures survive of you in uniform? When
Well, at home, that's all.
Okay, pictures from home.
Well, at home.
At home. Do you think he has pictures?
Where are the pictures at home? Are they in the dining room or upstairs in
You mean at the farmhouse?
at
Right?
the farmhouse? Yeah.
Right. I think I gave them to my sister Elizabeth, and I've been trying to get them from Lauren, but I haven't got them yet. I had a lot of pictures.
Did you keep a diary at all? Did you do a diary?
I lost it.
You lost the diary. Oh my gosh.
I had everything written down, and on one of my trips that I was running around with, I misplaced it and I never found it yet. Somebody got them.
Okay. What did you think of the officers and fellow crewmen that you served with on the ship? Did you have a high opinion of the men that you served with?
If they did good with us, I thanked them for it. But if they didn't, I told them where to go.
Okay. But you appreciated that you had good fellow crewmen to
Oh,
be
yeah,
part of
right,
a team with. I'm
right.
assuming that that was important to you. Okay. So when you were discharged from the service, it was in Boston,
Right,
and then you came directly home to Westfield, Massachusetts?
right.
Okay. What did you do immediately after being discharged when you came back home? What did you then do?
I went back to work where I was let go. I used to work at the Foster machine.
So you came back to work there?
Right.
Okay.
And shortly after, I got another job at West Springfield, Gilbarco. You probably know
Is that another machine shop?
him. Yeah.
Okay.
We did a lot of Navy work,
Okay.
and I stayed there for 20 years.
Did you go back to school, or did you use the GI Bill for anything?
Yep. I did agricultural work for maybe, probably 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
I was tied in with them.
But did you go to college or any kind of vocational school after the war where you used the GI Bill to pay for it?
I went to UMass, the agricultural school.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Right.
In up in
Amherst.
Amherst, I'm
Right.
sorry. Okay.
And I stayed there as long as I could,
Mm-hmm.
and I got whatever else I could. I think I was under the GI Bill for maybe 5 years.
Okay. To help pay for your schooling at
Right.
the University of Massachusetts.
Right.
But then you had a long career working as a machinist, though.
Right.
Is that right?
Yep.
But mixed in with that, what did you do? You had some kind of agricultural work that you did, or
I had 35 cows.
so you had a farm with
Right.
35 cows,
Right.
and you also worked as a machinist, though, at the same time.
Machinist, bus driver.
So you were very busy.
I didn't stop.
You didn't stop.
Could we take?
Okay. Hold on. Let me pause for just a moment, Paul.
You got all the facts and figures there?
I've got it all. It's looking good. Did you make any when you were in the service? Did you make any friends that lasted after the service? Did you have some buddies that you kept in touch with for a while? Or
None of them showed up.
none of them showed up. So you just lost
They were different parts of the country.
and they scattered everywhere.
Right.
Okay, like dandelions. Okay. Did you join any veterans organizations like the VFW or American Legion?
I did the VFW, but I bounced out of it.
You bounced out of it. Okay. We talked about your career after the war. Before we go on to some final summing up questions, let's just talk about a couple of anecdotes, such as Dave was mentioning. Tell me about when you were operating. I assume you fed the bullets into 20mm guns.
Yeah.
But you want to talk a little bit about what that did to your hands? Why don't you tell us about that, please?
Well, at that time, all we had was the 20mm guns. We didn't have the equipment to
To load them.
load them,
Okay.
and we worked with our thumbs.
Okay.
And fighting was getting pretty heavy, and the thumbs were getting swelled up pretty good. I had a thumb that was about 3 times as wide.
Just from having to constantly push
Right.
and put pressure on
Right.
the shells.
Yeah, it takes to put enough of pressure on it to get it to going right. It probably take maybe over 100 pounds.
Of pressure.
Right.
Wow.
And that isn't much on a thumb, but it
Well,
was
you're doing
there.
it over and over.
Right. And I couldn't get nobody else to feed them. And they're going through the guns like no tomorrow. So I kept pushing. When I got done, I had 2 tons, about 4 times those size as it should have been. And that was a toughie.
I'll bet.
Also on the ship, when the bomb went through the rudder, you said you lost power and you had to throw all the food overboard. Is that when you went back to Australia?
Yeah,
And
that was the time. Well,
except crackers to eat, right, for a few days.
So when the San Juan was damaged, you had to go back to Australia and you had to throw out your food. Why did you have to throw the food out?
because it was tomato juice and something else, I'm not sure. And it,
Crackers, I think you said.
yeah, crackers.
But the refrigeration went out, right?
Well, I don't remember that,
Well,
but
you had to throw all the perishable food overboard.
I could have. But there was enough of guys on the ship that they could eat it up as fast as you could dish it out to them.
Okay.
So I don't think there was a problem there.
Okay. You mentioned something else, not just the hot water. This we'll talk about the hot water. Evidently, when bombs would hit near the ship, it would send out big plumes of water.
Right.
And there was a danger being hit by that water because of the temperature. Can you talk about that, please? Tell me about that.
I don't think I had too much to do with that because I was a little bit further away.
Okay.
But when the bombs went off, they let off a lot of heat,
Right.
and it could have been fatal if it had too much of it.
If you got hit by
Right.
the hot water.
Yeah.
Because it was scalding hot water.
I don't think it was scalding because the ocean is big, you know. You could go through a lot of it and not feel too much.
Okay. You also mentioned, I believe, that when bombs would land near the ship, they would cause the pressure from the concussion from the bomb would cause bolts or rivets to pop out
If
on
they
the inside of the ship.
right, if they weren't put in right, if they're put in loose, yeah, they'd bounce out.
And they could hit somebody and
Oh yeah,
injure them.
right.
And also hot steam from a burst pipe or a damaged pipe as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, it could be, but there's a lot of water in the ocean, so they could dissipate it pretty fast.
Okay. 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 I'm going to ask you a couple of summing up questions, Paul. We talked about your career. Did your military experience influence your thinking about war or about the military in general? If you went through hell, what did that make you think about war?
Well, it's not good But what else can I say? We're there.
Okay. All right. Would you say that your time in the service and the experiences you had in the war, did they have a strong effect on your life? Would you say they shaped the kind of person you are? Did they have an impact on the way you think?
They could have, but I don't think I worried too much about it.
Okay, you just went on with your life after the war
Right.
and left those experiences behind you.
Yeah, if it did me any good, I'd use them, but sometimes I look the other way.
Okay. Is there anything that you would like to add? Any closing statement or comment you'd like to make about your experience in World War II?
Well, remember old Bing Crosby and his Christmas song?
White Christmas?
Yeah.
Oh, they said that you had something to tell me about that song, about hearing that song at some point during the war.
Right. Well, when they come over the radio, and a bunch of the guys were standing around
Where was this,
listening.
on the ship?
Right.
Okay.
And when old Bing Crosby started singing that song there were some guys on there that really cried their eyes out.
Mm-hmm.
It hit them kind of hard.
Made them miss home, probably.
Right. I have a feeling that's probably what it was. But they had had families and a lot of kids, and it hit their head.
Right. Isn't it true that toward the end of the war, when we thought the war would end by Christmas of 1944, there was the song called "I'll Be Home for Christmas"?
Yeah, I heard that.
And that was the one that was sort of an optimistic song that we
Right.
might have the war be over, but then it wasn't.
Yeah, a lot of things happened they shouldn't, and things that did, we remember it.
Mm-hmm.
But when we were in the middle of a fight, you didn't worry about it.
You're too busy
Right.
fighting and concentrating on your duties,
Either that or staying out of trouble.
staying out of trouble. Okay. All right. Well, Paul, that does conclude our interview, and United States of America and the Library of Congress both very much appreciate your contributions and your service and your gift of this interview today. So we thank you very, very much.
Well, I appreciate it.
Okay.
And I had something else to say, but
So please go ahead and say whatever you want to say. You've got plenty of time. Tell me what else you'd like to say.
well, it slips my mind right this minute.
Okay.
Maybe before you leave, it'll come to me.
Okay. Well, if it does, we'll add a little
Right,
postscript
right.
onto this. Okay.
Yeah, there was a lot of things going on. Some we like to hear about, others we threw them out the window. But I might come back to that a little bit later.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for hanging in there and giving a great interview.
Well, I hope whatever said meant something.
Oh, I think it does.
But I'm here and you're there.
Well, I'm glad I'm here, and I thank you very much for having me
Right.
as your guest today. I appreciate that.
Well, I thank you.
Okay. Well, that concludes it.